Baka, hey, Manga Tuesday. Hola, I'm the DRC, and this is Manga Tuesday episode 109. And today we shall be reviewing Record of the Glass Castle by Osamu Tezuka. Oh, look how the book has a nice reflection in it, almost like it's made of glass. If you don't know who Tezuka is, you're a complete fucking moron, and I refuse to explain it to such an imbecile. Record of the Glass Castle is an interesting read. The main center point revolves around the process of cryogenically freezing people and the idea of using that to achieve some sort of sense of immortality. This one wealthy family have jumped in at the forefront of the introduction of this freezing process, and the head of the family, the father, has opted to have his entire family frozen except for one at a time that must monitor all the others. And while they're frozen, they don't age a day, but the one on the outside who has to keep an eye on things does age. And that's just sort of the initial premise, I guess. You know, obviously complications ensue, although it is a very intriguing premise, although I feel like the initial ideas and themes and sort of things that could be explored very deeply, this whole freezing business, sort of gets lost as the manga progresses. It almost doesn't dive deep enough into that. Another thing I should mention, I probably should have mentioned it straight away before I discussed anything, is that this manga is forever unfinished. It does not have an actual ending, and I should also note that that's not said anywhere, like on the back in the blurb or online anywhere in the descriptions or anything. Nowhere does it sort of state that this manga doesn't have an actual ending, which it should, sort of. I think they should be upfront about that, but they're not. But the point is, it doesn't have an ending. I couldn't find too much information on it, but if you look on Mal, it does say discontinued, and the way it ends, it doesn't end. It's in the middle of the story. Maybe not the middle of the story. It could be, you could get the sense that it's maybe drawing towards, you know, the sort of the big conclusion maybe, but then it just ends. 7 chapters, they're longish chapters. I mean, this is enough for one volume, but it just doesn't have an ending. It's just, yeah, in the middle of the story, it just ends out of nowhere, just, this is the end. So it does seem pretty clear that it was just discontinued or just cancelled, or just Tezuka got bored with it and said, I'm not finishing that stupid story, fuck that. So if you're the type of person that cannot cope with something not having a conclusive ending, this is not the manga for you, I'll tell you that. But it is still an interesting read, especially considering, Tezuka's, impact and influence on manga as a whole. Any work by him is always going to be an interesting thing to check out, even if it's an unfinished piece like this. I also say it is really nice that something like this can get an official physical English release. It would be the type of thing you think probably wouldn't. Some Tezuka manga from the 70s that 7 chapters and doesn't even have an ending, was just dropped, canned. You would think that probably wouldn't get published. So I think it's just cool to see that even something like that can get published. Apparently it was funded by Kickstarter, this Platinum Manga imprint. It's some imprint of a larger company or something, I don't know. But they seem to be printing a lot of more obscure Tezuka-related manga within the last 2 years or so. So that is nice to see, I guess. I like it. I want to get more of this obscure Tezuka stuff. One problem I guess I had, obviously, I mean, it's a big problem that it doesn't have an ending. I mean, that just sucks. Regardless, there's never going to be a manga where it's a good thing if it doesn't have an ending. But the main character that we sort of focus on is kind of a bad guy. He's kind of the villain that we're sort of focusing on. So for me, I was sort of looking forward to and hoping and wanting to see, him finally get his comeuppance, because throughout the manga he kind of gets away with a lot of his dastardly deeds, but it does feel like at some point he's gonna have to face the music, but that never happens. Because it just ends out of nowhere, just ends. You don't see it coming, it just It's an abrupt ending, right in the middle of the story, no conclusion, and so thus no comeuppance for our bad guy. But some of the overarching big ideas and themes are definitely intriguing enough that I think it's worth a read anyway, just particularly because it is a Tezuka manga. I want to be frozen. And then just unthaw me in like a million years when immortality has been achieved. That sounds like a good idea. I don't care what this manga says to the contrary. I do feel like when I read, the description of what the story is about, the whole cryo sleep and immortality, but at what cost and that, I do feel like they could have done more with that part, but what I did read as the story naturally progressed, I still found it entertaining and compelling, and I wanted to, see where it went. Obviously, no one will ever see where it goes fully, because it just ends, but it's a pretty short read, so if you are interested in Tezuka, or just, a piece of manga history, it could be worth checking out. It won't be too big of a commitment of your time. And it has a nice cover that looks like glass, because it's reflective, and that's, because as we know, the number one thing that glass is known for is about being reflective. There's some really nice pieces of art in there, some really nice just shots and panels. I mean, it's that sort of typical Tezuka style art. If you've read anything by Tezuka, you sort of know he has a very, particular style, but there's still some really nice structured shots throughout, and it's quite